start? Welcome, everyone. My name is Debbie Allman. I'm the Program Quality Director for District 33. This is the first of a series of speech contest workshops. Ron Guilbault is our presenter for tonight's workshop. He is a self-described enthusiast who wants to share his take on tall tales. He is also a district level tall tales champion. Please join me in welcoming Ron Guilbault.
Well, it's great to see everyone. So many years ago, I was introduced to the tall tale. And in fact, the first conference I went to with a tall tale was with my wife, Grace, who competed with a superb story about a giant zucchini, which maybe she'll resurrect again someday. So I sort of like to talk a little bit about tall tales and my take on them and some ideas on building tall tales. So let's see here. Let's first of all start with what is a tall tale. Now, Toastmaster says it's a highly improbable, highly exaggerated and improbable, a speech with a highly improbable and I can't even say this, highly exaggerated and improbable theme or plot. To me, I think of it as a lie that took growth hormones. The joy of this speech is that you're not constrained by physics, by time, logic, reality, who you are, and all those other annoying similar factors that complicate your regular speeches. I want to just give you a couple of examples of tall tales that I've done before and the lunatic places you can go to them. So I grew up in the state of Maine, and one of the things that was popular in the state of Maine was lobster trapping. So I invented this character named Lobster Larry. And the goal was, I worked for Lobster Larry, and he was going to go out and capture the largest lobster ever. And he built a lobster trap the size of a Volkswagen Beetle. And anyways, eventually we capture the lobster, we get it on the ship. The lobster breaks out of the cage and it comes to attack me on the ship. Anyways, a big wave knocks us off into the water, and I thought it's all over. And the twist in the story was the lobster comes along, picks me up, and takes me to shore and rescues me. So the lobster that was going to kill me saves me. So that was one crazy story. So you can be completely crazy. Another speech, I was a Boy Scout going on a camping trip, and through a series of events, ended up sneaking my way into the Apollo 13 spacecraft. I was in there, and I actually helped save the spacecraft because I had duct tape with me. On the third example, I was a kid doing some ice skating. And when you're ice skaters, you like to take a rest. And so I sat down on a bench, which turned out to be a polar bear. And the story goes on from there. So you can go to crazy places with tall tales. You can practice humor. You can free your imagination. You can be someone or someplace or something impossible. You get to kick your imagination into high gear. You can be a kid again. And I also recommend, don't just do these during contest season. They're just wonderful all year long. Take you and your audience on adventures together. Now, here are some important things. Why is this speech better than the international or the humor speech? Well, the magic of this is it's the efficiency of the tall tale. Tall tales are 2 minutes shorter than international or humor. That means when you're writing a speech, you have to be really, really efficient, using only the words that will drive the speech forward. When you start practicing tall tales, when you're going to give regular speeches, those 5 to 7 minute speeches become easy. When you used to end up giving them at 9 minutes and 10 minutes, you're going to learn how to knock those speeches down to 5, 6 minutes by practicing tall tales, because you have to be efficient. And the other advantage of a tall tales, of course, is it should be humorous. So you're combining 2 speeches in one. And if you're clever, you can stuff in an inspirational or motivational message, thereby combining the tall tale with the humor and the international all in one. Very, very clever. This is something I've heard frequently. People say to me, Toastmasters, you say, okay, we're going to be doing a tall tales workshop, tall tales speech evening. And people go, you know, I can't lie, Ron. I just can't tell a lie. I can't do a tall tale. I'm just not a liar. The first thing I tell them is, you can't have a career in politics, so that's out. But to get around this, pretend being an actor, play a role, then you're off the hook. So if you can't lie, be an actor. Now there's some important words not to use in a tall tale. This is a 3 to 5 minute speech, which means every word has to carry weight. You can't have any extra words that don't drive the story forward. So here are words that to me, help kill a tall tale. At the end, it was only a dream. I was dreaming. Please, no dreams. Then I woke up. No, don't take your audience there. This is a true story. This really did happen. No, don't go there. Start off like it's a true story. Where it goes, who knows? But don't say this is a true story. It isn't needed. And there are 4 words that you can better use to drive your story forward. So what I consider next important is what happens next factor. So I like to start with something every day that's believable, where the action starts. And then I like to ramp up to the improbable, to wind it up. What could happen next is usually quirky or weird or impossible. So I suggest experimenting, see where it goes. If you run into a roadblock writing your speech, go back, start over. Throw in some conflict. Get your hero in trouble. And then at the end, have an unexpected twist. I'll give you an example of starting out a tall tale and where not to start out a tall tale. So let's say that you wanted to use an egg as the subject of your tall tale. One way you could start it out was, I woke up in the morning and I thought I'd like to have an omelet. So I decided to go to the store and buy some eggs. Already you've wasted several important seconds. Maybe a better way to start this out would be, I'm at the farmer's market and the farmer has one last egg left for sale and I buy it. So immediately you're down to one egg and you're at the farmer's market. And so now with one egg, you know that you have the possibility of taking that someplace special. What happens to the egg? Do you take it home? Do you think about cooking it? Does it start to make noise? Is there something other than a chicken inside the egg? Where does it go? So you can take any kind of everyday thing, like an egg, like a tube of toothpaste, like your pet, you name it, and think about, okay, take that object, that thing, that event, and what happens next? What's the craziest thing that you would least expect to have happen, and go from there, and then build your speech. You might not know where your speech is going right now, but you can start to work on it and play with it. Now there's a question too about bigger, how big to make your speech. In terms of the lie, the exaggeration, frankly, you just simply can't make it too big. However big you think it is, go bigger, go bigger. Some thoughts on the tall tale. It really is all about having fun, loving your story, enjoying the journey. When it comes to the contest, should you be selected at your club to go on to the area? If you should win an area, go on to division and then on to district. Don't worry about winning. Worry about winning the audience, having a good time. And I've got some thoughts on club contests. Don't hold them. my recommendation is do not hold club speech contests. Hold speech showcases. Here are the advantages to that. By the way, any club can choose any method they want for choosing candidates to go on to the area. But when you run a contest in a club, it adds complexity and it requires strictly following the rules. And this can take away from actually getting the most participation by your members in the meeting. What I recommend is to have everyone in the club put together a tall tale. We've done some things in the past where we get to a meeting, we've got everyone signed up to do a tall tale, and some members come in and go, I just don't have an idea. I'm completely without any ideas. So in in-person meetings, we'll have a basket. In the basket are pieces of paper with tall tale seeds. And so the person reaches into the basket, pulls out a seed, and there's a seed. And maybe the seed is the egg. And it's amazing what people will do impromptu with a little bit of a prompt like this, and off they go. And some of the best tall tales I've ever heard are ones where people were totally unprepared. They were just given an idea and off they went with it. And then your club can choose some method to choose the best person. One advantage of not calling it a contest is there's a surprising number of people in the club who absolutely do not want to compete. They don't want to compete, but they'll go and participate in a speech showcase and they'll surprise themselves and win the thing. They'll go, wow, we selected you had the best speech. Off they'll go to a contest. One great thing about an area contest and a division contest and a district contest is it's like each one of those is like doing 10 speeches at once. So if you've never been to an area contest, what you have to do to succeed there gives you experience that is incredibly valuable, incredibly valuable. There's some thoughts I have on speech contests, etc. So there's just sort of an outline of tall tales. They're big, whopping lies. We all should know how to tell them. You never know when you're going to be stopped by the police for speeding, and you're going to need to have a good story. Who's got some questions? Send them to Vanessa. Vanessa, if nobody sends you any questions, just make up one.
Tell us about your, oh, I'm sorry. I'll send my question to Vanessa, sorry.
Oh, you've already jumped in there. You can do that. You're the.
No, well, I would like to know about the contest where you won a district. What was your speech about?
I got to district 3 times with tall tales.
Okay.
One was the Apollo 13 speech. One was the polar bear speech, and the one that won was the dog food speech. And the dog food speech was when I was younger. I watched a lot of television. I don't know if anyone was a big television watcher, but and television in the old days was lots of advertising. And one of my favorite ads was Chuck Wagon dog food. And the little dog would in the race through the house following the Chuck Wagon. And then the dog would get to the bowl of dog food, which the person had poured water onto. And anyways, I started to think about that advertisement, and I thought, what did that taste like? Now, one of the things I asked when I competed at the district, which happened to be in Bakersfield, beautiful community, was I asked how many of the audience have eaten like a milk bone dog biscuit. And a surprising number of people have actually tried eating a milk bone dog biscuit. So the thought of, trying dog food as a kid was not such an unusual idea. And, it wasn't bad, actually. It tasted pretty good. So that was I just sort of built on it from there. And it just sort of what would happen? How would you go about it? What would happen after you ate the dog food? Well, you'd start to gain dog-like attributes and start behaving like a dog. And you just sort of let your mind go. The advantage of thinking like this is when you have to do regular everyday speeches, it helps you free up, it trains you to free up your mind so you're not constrained by, rigid thinking. It allows you to add more humor and fun into your speeches. And also, it's great help for tall tales, but where you have to think on your feet and come up with, answers to crazy questions. Vanessa, do we have any other fabulous questions?
Yes, we do, and I would ask you to limit your responses to 1 minute because there are quite a few.
Okay, I'll be quiet.
What do you think is more important, the plot or the word play? Wordplay. What do you think is more important, the plot or the word play? And this comes from Wendy Altman.
Well, hi, Wendy. I think it depends. I think you need plot, and I think wordplay helps. Wordplay can help with the audience because they're not expecting the words that you're going to be saying next. So I think you need to balance the two of them. But really, these are just my thoughts on the tall tale. You might discover that your wordplay is something that really carries a day. But plot, you want to keep the story moving forward, and you want to have fun with it.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Anna Romero. What's a good way to end a tall tale? What's a good way to end a tall tale?
Well, I like ending them with a twist. So you're going along, something is happening, the audience you're taking the audience down one particular road, and then you take a left when they're expecting a right, and that's how you end it. So with the lobster story, it looked like I was goners, the lobster was going to eat me, and the lobster ends up rescuing me. So that's the twist. There's the unexpected twist. It would not be pleasant to be eaten by a lobster, by the way. They've got really big, gnarly, claws and
Great.
And they eat everything too. They're kind of garbage eaters. So I would have been a perfect diet for the lobster.
Okay, thank you. Our next question comes from Grace. Tell us more about seeds for tall tales, and what about the non-verbal communication? Those are two separate questions, but from one person. So if you can combine that answer, more about the seeds for tall tales, and what about non-verbal communication?
So I'm going to ask Grace. Grace, you've done lots of tall tale seeding. I'm going to ask you to answer that question on seeding tall tales.
Hey, I'm not getting paid for this.
I'll share.
All right. Well, seeds, it is interesting how it's actually quite easy to come up with seeds for tall tales, because you can just make a list of really improbable things, or just situations, normal situations, like a package comes that you weren't expecting what's in it. A person knocks on your door that you weren't expecting. Who is it? Those kinds of things where you're setting up a situation that makes a seed. But a lot of times people like a seed that has to do with, you walk out in your backyard and there's a spaceship, and there's what happens next. Or you go to Costco and suddenly everything is different. How is it different? So things like that, just get people started, and everybody has a great imagination. So, but you're the king of nonverbal communication, so I think you should answer that.
Well, I think anytime you can exaggerate your story with gestures, expressions, costumes, what have you, all adds to the power of the speech. And the methods Grace has described, we've used in clubs very successfully to get almost complete participation in the event. So we're having a speech, a Tall Tales showcase. We've got one person who's doing the timing, a person who's a Toastmaster, another one who's counting the the ballots, and everyone else is giving a tall tale, and some of them are absolutely unbelievably good. And when you have 10, 12 tall tales in a meeting, it makes for the best meeting ever. Vanessa.
Yes, our next question comes from Kenneth Smith. What defines substantially original? What defines substantially original?
Well, certainly if you're giving an international speech, substantially original is a question. I'm not going to even want to go there. I'm really not familiar with too many people doing substantially original in tall tales. Usually they're pretty reasonably original. What you don't want to do in any kind of speech contest is steal someone else's speech or use someone else's speech for your speech. You need to be coming up with your own original ideas. I've been at speech contests where someone has taken a speech that went before them and added parts to their speech, and that really is a nasty, bad thing. You don't want to do that. You want to have your own thoughts and your own ideas. Now, here's what's going to happen. If you have a speech contest with, I don't care what the speech contest is, say there's 7 participants, and we'll say it's an international speech for the sake of argument, and you're going to talk about your mom, how she was the person that made the great difference in your life. I guarantee you there will be a second person in that speech who will have a speech about their mom and how it made a difference in their life. And I've done tall tales contests where the person before me had accidentally come up with a speech almost exactly like the speech I was going to give, just by accident. So it might be good to have a second tall tale or a second speech in your pocket ready to go that you can shift gears pretty quickly. So because there's nothing worse than having the same speech, giving the same speech that someone else gave or similar, you know. So if it's international, change it to your dad who saved the day, not your mom.
Our next question comes from Chris Benedict. What's wordplay in reference to our last question? What is wordplay?
Well, the English language is got lots of possibilities. Words have multiple meanings. So you can play with, the one great thing about the English language is the incredible flexibility in what words mean and how you structure the sentence. So it's really a matter of playing with the language, word order, and the double and triple meanings of words. So how you combine those things. But you want to take the audience, you want to give them an idea of where you're going, and then you want to take them someplace where they're not expecting, which brings humor.
Our next question comes from Lena Chandler. It's a less fun topic, but where do you see the official contest rules and requirements and protocols on District 33 website? And I believe that's regarding tall tales. And she has another question. Where do you find the rules? And her next question is,
so if you go to if you go to the Toastmaster website and go to the search window, go to speech contest rules. The current rule book is there. Every year there's a revision. So if you've got last year's rule book, toss it, get the PDF of the current rule book. So there's always revisions to go with the rule books. So if it's a club, just to remember, if you have a club and you held a contest in a club and you call it a contest, you must follow the rules exactly, which means I'll give you a scenario. You have 3 people who participate in your club contest. Everyone goes to 5 minutes and 31 seconds. All 3 are disqualified. None can go on to the area contest. Your club has no representatives. Now I'll take the scenario further. This happens to 2 clubs in your area. You only have 4 clubs in your area. Now your area contest contestants. Let me tell you, that is one dull, boring area contest. Have 4 contestants at your contest. The best way to ensure that is to, I think, have a showcase for your club maximize the participation. Think of the area. Anyone who's been to an area contest with 2 contestants, it's not a great thing. It's not a lot of fun for the audience. So rule book online.
Also from Lena, what about the props? Are they allowed? Are they encouraged?
Absolutely. Props are wonderful. Keep in mind, if the props help to drive the story forward, use a prop. If you're just using it, if the prop doesn't help drive the story forward, don't use it. But if you have a prop that you fumble, doesn't work well, if the sergeant at arms is, say it was Joseph Scotus, a sergeant at arms, and he's had just a little bit too much before the meeting, and he doesn't handle the props correctly, that can really screw things up, unless it's part of the shtick, I guess. But so props are great, but if it doesn't, it needs to drive the story forward. Remember, you've got 3 to 5 minutes. So if you're fumbling with a prop, it's not helping to move this thing forward. 3 to 5 minutes, 5 minutes goes by really fast. And when you build your speech, you can't build a 5.5-minute speech. Maybe you build a 4-minute and 30-second speech. Because when you give the speech, if you've built it right, you're gonna get laughter and audience laughter. And you have to wait for the laughter to die down to continue. And this takes time. So your 4-minute and 30-second speech starts to creep up to 5 minutes and 5:15. And you don't want to get it into the red or too far into the red. So when you say the red light goes on, you want to get off. So don't build speeches to take the full 5 minutes, 4.5 minutes, and then your humor, your laughter will carry you further.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Craig Hench. How do you bring the fiction story to an end without just stopping? How do you bring the fiction story to an end without just stopping?
Bang. Well, as I described with the lobster story, the lobster breaks out of the cage. It's on the ship. I go into the water with the big wave. The lobster rescues me. So, and then the lobster picked me up and took me to shore, and I was saved. End of story. So don't make it too complicated. But the twist really helps you with the ending. So have the twist. That's how it ends. You're rescued. With the polar bear. The polar bear story. Let's just say that. Well, anyway, we don't have time to go into that speech. That's be 5 minutes to tell you how the polar bear story ended.
Okay, in less than 5 minutes. This comes from Tom Phelps. Hi, Tom. We're related. How important is gauging audience interest, like pets or health? I'd like to know.
I think Tom has made an excellent observation.
Right. Sometimes you're on Zoom. How do you don't get that audience?
Well, okay, but there's part of that question I'm going to reinterpret, which is the more relatable your story can be to people. So the dog food story, just about everybody's tried a milk bone or is familiar with dog food and some of the antics that went on with Postman and other things in the story so that you could relate to. So, for example, with the egg story, everyone has eaten an egg. Everyone is familiar that the possibility that chickens come from eggs. So you're already talking about something that somebody can anticipate. If it gets too weird and they can't relate to the subject at all, then it makes it harder to get some laughter and some humor. And you need the speech to be humorous. It really needs to be funny to keep the audience engaged. And on terms of Zoom, yes, you have to anticipate things. You have to do things a little bit differently in Zoom. And it's a challenge. But you know what? Even after COVID is long gone and we're back to meeting in person and we're not meeting on Zoom, you're still going to be using video calls and video meetings, and you're still going to have to learn how to engage with audiences over video. So this isn't going away. Consider the time that we're spending with video as being a great lesson for us in communicating with this new medium. I'm off subject. Sorry about that.
Our next question, hello from Bakersfield, from Brittany Brim. Our next question is from Wendy Altman. a lot of tall tales I heard use a lot of puns, such as your main characters are animals. I'm telling you the truth. Think I'm lying? That's cute, right? Should you use that? Puns.
My approach with a tall tale is that I'm delivering an absolutely true 100% it happened story. I will deny vehemently that anything that I say in a tall tale is anything but absolute 100% truth that I'm delivering with conviction. Whether you've got some puns in there or other things, great, but I think you should deliver it with absolute sincerity, and you believe it 100%. I ate the dog food. It was delicious, let me tell you. And if you make it to the contest and you get interviewed, I think your interview should be absolutely 100% firmly believing that it really did happen, whatever the story was or whoever you were.
Very good. Please pay attention to the chat box. Our Madam District Director has dropped a lot of resources into the chat box regarding the Tall Tales contest and the rule book. And I have a question of my own since I don't see any more out there. How can you not confuse humor, the humorous speech contest, with the Tall Tales contest? Do you like mesh the two together?
Okay, so good question. A lot of people who do humorous speeches confusingly do tall tales, and a humorous speech is not a tall tale, but a tall tale should be a speech that makes your audience laugh and should be funny. But a humorous speech, if you're giving a tall tale for a humorous speech, it's not really the same kind of thing. A humorous speech is actually a true story as opposed to a made-up story. So that's really the difference. Is one's a great big lie and one's not a great big lie. It doesn't mean that in a true story, in a humor contest, that the truth needs to get in the way of telling a good story. So sometimes the truth has to be parked a little bit, but essentially, a tall tale is a total fabrication. You're just a liar.
Great, thank you. There's one more question, and that comes from, explain more about how a tall tale can go very, very wrong. And I would like to know how to correct it. You see you're going south?
So Grace asked the question, how does a tall tale go wrong? And I'm trying to think of an example of one going wrong. Grace, can you give me an example of a tall tale going wrong?
Yeah, that's not fair. I asked the question. I do know that after every either humorous or tall tale contest, I'm always having a conversation in the restroom with someone who's livid because the winning contestant gave, if it was a humorous speech, they gave a tall tale, or if it was a tall tale contest, they just gave a humorous speech that was just a little bit more exaggerated. So maybe you could talk a little bit more about the distinction between humorous and tall tales, and what makes a really beautiful tall tale. What are some of the tall tales? Maybe even other people have ideas of tall tales that they did themselves or they heard that they thought were super.
So I can tell you about, I'll think about Jim Whitmer. If you know Jim Whitmer, he gave us a tall tale about his troupe of dancing worms. So he had trained some worms to dance. Okay, this is not true. Jim did not, in fact, well, I don't believe that Jim actually trained the worms to dance. So that was clearly a tall tale. If Jim gave the dancing worm speech at a humorous contest, he might accidentally win because the judges don't know any better, but it's really not a humorous story. It's funny, it is humorous, but it's not a, if he wanted to talk about as a kid digging worms out of in his garden and eating them to shock his mother, and it's a true story, well, that'd be one thing. But the dancing worm story is clearly a tall tale. A tall tale is a lie. Folks, this is some wild, crazy thing that you're telling. You are pulling somebody's leg. You're convincing them about some crazy thing that happened. And the humorous story, you're not trying to convince somebody about some crazy thing that happens. You're telling them probably a real story that happened. That's in reality. And so one's fantasy and one's reality. So that really is to me, the difference. I don't know if I'm answered your question, Grace, but you're the one who
The next
asked it. So
question comes from Anna Romero. Should a tall
again, okay.
It's okay. Should a tall tale have a story behind it? Is it possible for it to just be a series of what happens next? That's a good question.
Well, it should
Should
be a
tall tale have
story.
a story behind it, or is it possible for it to just be a series of what happens next?
It's a story. So it needs to have a beginning and a middle and an end. It needs to be a story. You're telling a story. A tall tale is a tall story. So you're telling a story. It has to be a story. If it isn't a story, it's not a tall tale. It's just like with a humor speech. A humor speech is not a series of one-liners. It's not stand-up comedy. A humor speech is telling a story also. It just happens to be a true story. That's the difference. But you're telling a story. So we're storytellers. I mean, Toastmasters really is about telling stories. And we have different kinds of stories. International speech is telling an inspirational or motivational story. Humor speech is telling a true story that's funny, that's got humor in it. Maybe it's not funny, but it's humorous. A tall tale is, this is a chance for you just to forget about what makes sense and to go crazy. So, and some of these are my opinions. I've heard tall tales, for example, that were fairy tales. And I was just like, oh God, a fairy tale. The person happened to win that district with that. To me, a fairy tale doesn't really work, but for that person, I'll tell you, the delivery was amazing and they cleaned up that year. So.
Laquita says, I like your tall tale like background. Man on top of a huge potato and a relay card.
That's a real photo. It was taken in the state of Maine, and they grow very big potatoes there.
And that's a tall tale.
No, that really is. Anyone who's been to the state of Maine knows that potatoes grow that large. It's just, Vanessa, you just haven't done much traveling, so you need to get out of Lompoc and get out there and start to see the world.
I get it.
Biggest ball of string, etc.
It may be a little bit off the track, but I'd like to know if you're a judge and you're judging a tall tale contest, then what are the prerequisites to be a judge for that contest? And I think that it should be that you should have at least competed in a tall tale contest. But I know that's not a fact. So my question is more a comment than a question.
I'll tell you, it helps for any judge. There's certain requirements that are outlined in the rule book. If you've heard humor speeches before, if you've heard internationals before, if you've heard tall tales before, if you've heard these contests before, if you're the first time you're ever exposed to any of these contests, I don't think that's necessarily the best person to have in the judging team. But you know what? If they fit the requirements, sometimes when you're a contest chair and you're trying to get judges, you don't have the luxury of having people who have heard these things before. It's just not, you can't always have that. And I should tell you something about contests. If you make it through the club and you get to area, this is something that happens that can cause discouragement for people who compete in contests. So you deliver what has to be the best tall tale you've ever imagined. It is phenomenal. and you don't even place. What happened? And you're thinking suicide thoughts. Oh my God, I put all this work into it, didn't place. Well, here's what happened in the judging, a couple of scenarios. All the judges put their votes in and they're tabulated, they're scored up. One person gets 20, one gets 19, one gets 18, one gets 17. Really, those three people are all just about equal. The difference between 20 and 17 is not much. It's not like the difference between 20 and 5. So the purpose of the contest is really to choose someone to go on to the next level. Everyone can't go on. You get people that, frequently you get people who are all clustered together really close. The difference between 20 points and 19, one's second and one's first place, there's no difference. They're both great speeches, but both can't go on. Here's another scenario. You get 4 speakers who get identical scores. They're all considered by the judges to be equal. They're all great, but all can't go on. So there's a tie-breaking judge. One person gets to choose who goes on to the next level. It doesn't mean you didn't have the greatest speech. It wasn't phenomenal, but everyone can't go on to the next level. So something you need to do is to coach your members or coach yourself. When you go to a speech, you really have one goal, contest, to win the audience. You want to win the audience. That you didn't go on to division or to district, it doesn't mean you didn't have a great speech. It just means that someone got 1 extra point. And if you get, it's win the audience and you've won the day. And then the next time there's a speech contest, get in there and go for it. So.
And again, because I get to monitor the chat, I'm going to throw my thoughts out. I think it's a shame that if you're judged that the people who are almost there don't know that they're almost there and what would have taken them to that next winning level.
Well, the judges don't talk about, when you're a judge, you don't talk to you take every contestant, you treat them equally. You say, hey, what a great job you did. Hey, what a great job you did. It just has to be the way it is. The judges cannot talk about it. You just have to go into the contest thinking, I'm going to have a good time. I'm going to have fun. If you get laughter from an audience, you've won. If you have won. Just because you didn't want to go on to the next level, you've won. You have won the audience. The audience is the winning part. Winning the audience. Having someone the next year that they loved your speech and start telling it back to you, even though you didn't win, but they remember your speech, that's winning.
I agree.
The trophy, who cares?
Our next question comes from Larry Bishop. Does an almost believable tall tale have an advantage over a wilder tale?
It depends on how you wind people up.
It depends.
I like the idea of starting out just about believable, like it almost is believable. And then you slowly wind, you're taking them on a trip where they're going, well, maybe this could, I bought the last one. Well, maybe this one is pretty good. Oh, okay. Oh, and then it's like, well, no, this has gone crazy. But it's your speech. If you want to go crazy faster, that's your business. You want to start out completely insane. There's a flying saucer in your backyard and you just hop right on and off you go. Or, if it was mine, I'd probably be taking it a little bit slower. Just then slowly, again, you got 4.5 minutes really that you can play with. So you can't go too slow. You got to keep, which is why you don't say this is a dream. You want to just don't waste any words. You're not going to believe this story. This is a true story. Don't, no, you're at a tall tales contest. Everyone knows it's absolute truth.
Great answer. Greg Wilkerson asks, has Toastmasters ever considered having a People's Choice Award in addition to a contest winner? Great question, Greg. Has Toastmasters ever considered having a People's Choice Award in addition to a contest winner?
I can't answer that question exactly. I'll do a political answer to that question. Toastmasters International fears the tall tale. So in Colorado, where Toastmasters is headquarters, they shake in their boots with tall tales because they know if they allowed it to go all the way to the international level, that no one would care about the international speech. All they would care about was this wild, wacky story that got told. And these stories would be repeated. And the classic international, no one would care about it. So TI is terrified of this. This is, why do you think it stops at the district level if it's so good? Because they're scared. They are so scared. So let me tell you, this is an important speech, and that our district is doing this speech means that we are on the ball. We have the best district ever.
Yes, we are. I agree.
Not to mention the smartest and most intelligent and most handsome members of any Toastmaster district anywhere. Clarice will agree with that. Okay.
I agree too. I want to know if there's time enough for people to share their tall tale experiences.
God, yes, we should do that.
Can
So
I go?
who's? Oh yeah, of course. Well, I don't know, Vanessa. You've said it. Let someone else go.
All right. Floor's open. Twyla.
One of the most interesting tall tales I ever heard was a girl who described her experiences with a new baby. And the new baby cried, the new baby did these weird, strange things, and she was just driven to distraction by all the terrible, terrible things she was experiencing with the new baby. And when we got to the 4.5 minutes, she turned her head sideways, and she had these pointy ears like an elf. Her baby was a Keebler baby. And everybody knows what a Keebler cookie is. I have never forgotten the story of the Keebler baby.
That's great. Next. Or can I squeeze my story in?
Okay.
Okay, so I was at this tall tale contest, and the story was so amazing that I actually believed until the person who was telling me the story said there was this divine intervention, and they only had one bullet, and they prayed to God to help them, and God did help them because they split the bullet in half. Do you remember that story?
Yes, and
It was
just so you know that
amazing.
the
Absolutely.
backstory. There's a backstory for that. That woman was at a club meeting, and there was a table topic question, which she answered, and she was so brilliant. I happened to be at that meeting, and I said, you should do the tall tales contest. And no one else in the club wanted to do it, so she was volunteered, and she came up with this totally insane thing. So this was someone who never thought about doing the contest, gave a wacky tall tale, and was encouraged and really blossomed. She was amazing.
Was
Who else has
absolutely
done?
amazing.
Who else has either heard or done a great tall tale?
Now's your opportunity to share.
Yeah. Grace, tell us about your tall tale. Your tall tale.
Well, I'll tell you about my tall tale experience on the district stage. And I remember the woman with the Keebler elf ears too, Twyla. That was a good speech. But I gave my speech. I was a very new Toastmaster, and somehow I made it through the ranks and couldn't believe it. And I practiced and practiced. I was so nervous. Oh my God, it was awful how nervous I was. Got through my speech. It actually went pretty well. And the person who was after me had the most amazing tall tale I'd ever heard. Even though I was experienced, I knew he would come in first, and he did. And he knew he could use sound effects, and he had a whole sound box and light show, and it was Elvis come back from outer space, and it was he just did such a fabulous job. And it was crazy, and it was wild, and he was such a great performer. He had everything all came together in this one speech. And I learned so much about what was important with his speech. And that was the first I knew that you were supposed to make your tall tale funny. My tall tale wasn't funny at all. I'm good at being funny. I just didn't know tall tale was supposed to be funny. So there's a lot of experience. The next year, my tall tale had to do with Elvis. So you can get inspired from others. Mine was very different, but I stuck, that great speech stuck with me. And so go forth and lie.
Thank you, Grace. Greg, what say you? Let's hear your experiences with tall tales. Greg Wilkerson.
Well, Toastmasters, I think Tall Tales has a spectrum of opportunities, from truly outlandish to everything in between. But to me, the best tall tales are ones that have a 99% probability of being impossible, but there could be. And I think that takes some really nuanced speech preparation to craft that kind of a speech. So let me give you an example out of my class on geology in Hollywood. One of the best science fiction movies from the 50s was called Monolith Monsters. Now, let me see a show of hands. Does anybody remember Monolith Monsters? Anybody? Well, the plot involved an asteroid that hit the Earth and started to grow. And it would grow into these huge crystals, soaking up all of the silica around. And these crystals were going to destroy Ridgecrest. And so they discovered that salt interfered with the growth of the crystals. And so they blew up a dam to flood through a salt mine, and the salt washed up against the crystals and arrested the growth and saved the town. Now, that sounds pretty crazy, right? But if you tell the story as if you were a geology professor talking about your studies of the thing and the thin sections and the seismic, you could craft it in a way that sounds plausible, okay? So those are the kind of tall tales I like to encourage people to prepare, or ones that are entertaining, number one, but also that, that could have happened. And you want to leave your audience with that thought that it could have happened, or what if it will happen. And that way, I think it makes the speech memorable, number one, which is what any speech giver wants, right? We want people to remember what we had to say at least a week from now, and if they remember it, like you're talking about this lady with the elf ears. This was what, 2 years ago or 5 years ago? It was a while ago. And that's the measure of an outstanding speech. Martin Luther King's "I Got a Dream" speech, that will be played for centuries from now. And that's what we aspire to as Toastmasters, is to entertain, educate, and place within the mind and heart of our listeners something that they will take with them perhaps their whole lives. And if we're able to develop those skills within ourselves and those around us, then we have contributed to our society. And that's how I think every speech we give is an opportunity to make our society better. And if we do that, then we're living up to the aspirations of our organization.
Greg, thank you very much. Much appreciated. Now, there's something that Ying Min put into the chat, and I want to just at one point, I didn't talk about delivery. I'm going to assume that when you're giving a speech, you're thinking about eye contact, you're thinking about gestures, you're thinking about pacing, you're thinking about how you're delivering the thing, you're thinking about how you're acting on the stage. Those are just kind of givens for any speech. A tall tale is no different. Every speech you give, you've got to be thinking about how you are delivering the speech, how fast you're delivering it. I mean, that's a whole different kind of a topic. I'm assuming that when you're doing a tall tale, you're not forgetting about all of those things. All those things are really, really important. I mean, there's a whole, we could talk about that for hours about how you deliver. And they also, as I mentioned, about how the judges are supposed to use the forms to, what percentage for this and what percentage for that. Yes, that's what they're supposed to do, but in reality, it doesn't work out quite that way. So, 30% for content. Well, how much of the speech, sometimes that becomes kind of a challenge. It's hard for judges to break things down into 30% for this and 15% for that, what have you. So we've got only 4 minutes to go. We managed to keep
just 4 minutes to go. Joel and Stephanie says that Elvis comes back from outer space. He's pulled by hound dogs. That sounds like a great topic for a tall tale. What say you, Ron?
Well, first of all, Vanessa, we know that Elvis is still alive.
Yes, he is. I agree.
And I've heard that he was taken away by spacecraft. So that might fall into a different kind of speech. Maybe there's an international speech in there as opposed to the tall tale. So you want to remember that the tall tale is supposed to be like, way out there, crazy stuff. This is not supposed to be, here we're practicing pulling people's legs and having fun doing it. Okay. Anyone else have a profound question or a thought they want to share before we say it was great having you all here tonight on a Friday night? Who is prepared for when the police stop them for speeding home tonight or speeding wherever with a good response of why they were driving so fast?
I gotta go pee.
I haven't tried that one. That could be a good one.
Okay, so that actually happened to me.
Me too.
We were speeding and we were drinking and we were driving. And the police officer pulls up. This is 20 years ago. And he says, drinking? And we say, yes, if you're buying. It was funny at the time. We didn't get a ticket. And we got home safely.
So here's my closing call to action for you. A, go to your club, have everyone in your club give a tall tale, encourage them to experiment with this speech. Even the ones who say they can't lie, you know what to do. You can tell them to become actors. Have your clubs all become dynamic tall tale tellers. And then every one of you, except for you, of course, district officers can't, Anna, you're out, Debbie, you're out, etc. Clarice, you're out. You can't compete this year, but in a year or two, you can. Tell a tall tale. It will, during the year, the practices of tall tales will pay off time and time again. People are going to start delivering speeches on time. They're going to be more creative with their table topics. Your meetings are going to be more fun. You're going to have more laughter. You're going to get more members. Tall tales is the secret to making your clubs phenomenal. It is the one magic ingredient that we need. And you're the ambassadors for this tool for your club. Just think of that. We've got 36 ambassadors here ready to go out and spread the news, to change the world, to lie like they've never lied before. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. You've been a great audience. I appreciate all the Venmo that has come my way this evening. It's great. Finally, we're going to be able to put gas in the car. It's phenomenal.
Thank you, Ron. I enjoyed every single minute.
Good night, all.
Oh, it's on this side.
Blessings. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. That was wonderful, Ron. Great job.
Under the trash can.
I know, I see.
It's really the amazing audience we had tonight.
It helped. Definitely helped.
Thanks, Ron. That was great.
Yeah.
Bye.
I really like the part, we don't have to have a speech contest. And in fact, it's preferable not to at the club
In
level.
my opinion,
That was very
in my
valuable.
opinion,
Yeah,
it
very
might, it
valuable.
makes, think of the encouraging all members to compete, but all members to participate in an event around the international or tall tales, whatever it is. But what we tell people is, even if you don't have to go on to the area level, if you're chosen tonight, you don't have to go on. Just give us an international speech, give us a tall tale. And if they end up chosen, then you can like say, well, look, everyone loved your speech. Why don't you just give it a try? And here's what will happen. You're going to get someone who is going to do this. It's going to scare the bejesus out of them. They're going to be scared to death. They're going to go at the area level. They're going to be nervous. You're going to have to coach them. And guess what? When they're through with this, they're going to be different people. They're going to come back to the club and they're going to go, huh, this is easy. I just did this in front of 40 people. This is amazing. Yes. Oh, but basically I have to go. Talk to you later.
Thank you, guys.
Still recording, Deb.
Okay, thanks.